It seems like every month or so at the moment, Motorsport Games has an absolute disaster class, and this month has been no different. We started out the year with the news that IndyCar and the Indy 500 wouldn't be on iRacing, and then we get into the first big sim racing event of 2023, of course being the Virtual Le Mans series, and sadly, there's no other way to describe it, it was an absolute disaster. For those of you that weren't aware, basically every year, Virtual Le Mans run a 24-hour race around, obviously, the Circuit de la Sarthe Le Mans, with virtual drivers, real-world drivers, they all compete against each other on R-Factor 2. Now, this has been ran, I think, 3 or 4 times before now on R-Factor. Funnily enough, I actually competed in one of the Forza events they did many, many years ago, and I think in the 4 races they've done now, 3 of them have had major server issues, as in drivers being booted out, whether it's the server being DDoSed or what. And this year seems to have absolutely taken the cake with it. From the team blaming, I think it was streamers for accidentally leaking the server address. It was publicly available anyway. Anyone could go onto our Factor 2 servers and just find the server address, to obviously the most famous thing being Max Verstappen saying he's not going to compete anymore in Virtual Le Mans. Now, you know, I certainly don't hide the fact I'm not Max Verstappen's biggest fan. However, for sim racing, he is so important to the success and the continued future and progression of sim racing with the real world of motorsport. You know, the fact that Max has been using iRacing R-Factor for years up to this point really does go to show, you know, that there is such a strong link now. You know, the technology's come on so much over the last few years as well that, you know, sim racing, real racing, they are so intertwined now. You know, we're seeing teams like Mercedes and Red Bull, you know, creating virtual teams to compete in these events. And Motorsport Games just keep mucking it up. Now, I've seen a lot of people saying that really, you know, next year it should go over to iRacing. You know, Le Mans, the ACO should just bin off Motorsport Games and go to iRacing. It's probably a better idea, but iRacing isn't perfect either. I think a lot of people forget just how many issues they get with some of their big virtual events. Of course, Daytona 24 is this weekend. If they really, really want to just sort of kind of, you know, give that punch in the stomach towards R-Factor 2, they need to make sure that runs without a hitch across all the servers, not just Top Split. But there is a big, big push now, I think, from sim racers to really now try. You know, we've sort of seen Motorsport Games, you know, they're going for exclusivity deals. They're trying to buy up titles. They're promising games. You know, they had 2 games planned for release in 2022. NASCAR and I think the IndyCar game. Both of them have been delayed and, by the sounds of it, basically scrapped at the moment. It's just disaster after disaster. You know, it was quite clear. They came in, they wanted a monopoly over sim racing. You say what you will, you know, monopoly in most things is not good, and, you know, the promises they made, you know, had things worked out, could have been fantastic for sim racing. You know, a British touring car game, IndyCar game, better NASCAR games, everything like that. Loads of games that I would have loved to have played, loved to have given a go, but we're simply not getting any of it at the moment. We're just getting all the bad stuff, the exclusivity, the issues, the disconnects, the real drivers that are going up against it. I feel so incredibly sorry for the team that, you know, tried to put Le Mans Virtual together, you know, the teams on the social media, everything like that, the commentators, things like that. Unfortunately, a lot of them have obviously only been paid to say positive things, which, you know, I'm not going to go at them for. It's their job at the end of the day. They're there to make sure they get paid, and they've just got to do what they've got to do, of course. The fact that teams weren't allowed to mention certain things or feature certain clips as well, I think is absolutely insane. It's quite clear that R-Factor 2 and obviously the team that was setting up the Virtual Le Mans inside Motorsport Games knew of all these issues and weren't going to fix them. And I'm sure there's a lot of you asking, Matt, it's just a game. Why does anyone care so much? $250,000 on the line. From a lot of the virtual drivers, it's their job to compete, just like a real racing driver in real life. These guys put in so much practice, so much work, and let's not forget as well, teams were putting in between the region of $2,000 to $2,500 just to compete. They're paying this sim to be able to compete for that prize money, and they're not even given a fair shot at it. If they get disconnected, sometimes they're allowed to get their laps back. Other times, for example, Team Redline, Max Verstappen's team, they weren't allowed. It seems like they were just writing the rules up as they go along. It just absolutely boggles the mind that we can go through this same cycle each year in, year out with R-Factor 2, and it just never seems to get fixed. Whether, next year, I think if they're dead set, if the ACO are completely locked into this contract still, whether it's worth trying to make it a LAN event. But again, you've then got to try and get 60 or 50, 60 teams, can't quite remember the exact number off the top of my head, to one location at one time. All these virtual drivers, all these real-life racing drivers, that's just near impossible. I just don't genuinely see a way this is going to work unless they really put some money into fixing the platform. Whether it's you don't have a race next year and you run one in 2025, you really spend some money to try and fix the issues, because the way it's going at the moment, Motorsport Games have a big potential. A lot of people this might have been the very first sim racing event they watched. We're starting to see more and more motorsport coming back in 2023, but there's still a lot of blank space, between Formula 1 coming back, between World Endurance and the all-new LMDH cars, everything like that. A lot of people will have been getting their motorsport fixed last weekend from the virtual Le Mans. They're not going to want to buy R-Factor 2 if it's like this. They're not going to want to spend, money on a Fanatec steering wheel or anything like that. It just turns people away because they can't do their job properly. And as you can probably understand, normally I don't get too angry or frustrated or upset by a lot of things, but this weekend, genuinely, I wasn't involved in it. I have never been involved in it. Like I said, I did one on Forza years ago with them, and that didn't run into many particularly big issues. But whatever they're doing at the moment is simply not working, and desperately do we need things to change. Max Verstappen's already said that's him done with it. He's not going to bother competing anymore. They spent 2 months practicing to try and win this race. His team are leading the championship. They're out of it now. It's gone. It's over. However much the top prize was, I think it was $100,000. That's gone out the window in an instant because of something out of their control. Some people have said, it's similar to having a mechanical failure or something like that. No, it's not. It's a lottery with this sort of thing. If you get a mechanical failure in the real world of motorsport, it's because, normally, of course, it's a bit different in spec series, but it's because of a failure or building the car, you haven't done it properly, or you've been driving too aggressively with it, or something like that. Yes, sometimes bad luck can come into it in its own, but often that's not the case. Mechanical failures are also a thing in R-Factor anyway, so drivers were having to drive around that to avoid mechanical failures, and then they're just getting booted out anyway. It just doesn't make sense. Motorsport Games, I'm sorry, you've desperately got to fix what's going on. The share price is down such a ridiculous percentage over the last couple of years as well. There's such little faith in the system anymore. I really do wonder behind the scenes how many motorsport organisations, ACO, IndyCar, things like that, have signed on the dotted line with Motorsport Games, taken what looked to be quite a healthy paycheck and gone, this is a disaster. Why on earth have we done this? And we'll be looking to try and get out of it once more, because at the moment, Motorsport Games are killing sim racing, not adding to it and bringing it up further like they'd always had in mind. But that's going to do us for this little mini rant today. Let me know your thoughts and feelings on all of this as well. Just so frustrated with the way the virtual Le Mans went this weekend, and like I said, I wasn't even competing. Background footage for this video is probably the sim that they should be using for future events as well. But yeah, thank you all so much for watching nonetheless. If you have enjoyed, please do make sure you leave a like, get yourself subscribed. I'm going to try and do more opinion pieces and things like this on this channel. But yeah, that's going to do us for this one, and we'll be back very, very soon with more racing or sim racing related content.